Wonderful. I hope everybody has a good weekend. Like Jose says, that everybody's safe and sound. We're happy to all be back together today for another great episode of Meet the Professor. But I think Melanie has a little announcement to make. Melanie?
So today we decided to create a poll about what size matters to you. And so if you go and you look for, I think it's down there in the chat or the three dots, you will see that poll and you can click which size it fits you best. And then we're gonna talk about these. Why?
Wonderful. So let's figure out if we can make this work. There's a poll going on. So somewhere down there, you should be able to click and answer the different questions. And it'll be our first polls that we have. But in the meantime, back to you, Professor. I know today is a very, very important subject. We're going to be discussing construction, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct. And, you know, the thing is that, I know it's happened to you, it's happened to Carlito again. When we talk about construction, to me, that's one of the most important aspects. You have to look at the tobacco. Of course, you have to cure the tobacco, you got to ferment the tobacco, you got to age the tobacco. All that is true. But let's talk really what's important.
Obviously, the hands of time must be something. There's definitely some patience.
Let's say that you could have the best tobaccos in the world, including the best wrapper in the world, which is Cameroon. But when you're making that cigar, if you don't have those supervisors on top of those guys making the cigar, that's where you have problems. Like at Fuente, all the cigars are made the old Cuban style, which is entubar. You have people that do estujado, they do entubado, they have the both. In my opinion, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you make the cigar. What's the most important thing? That the fillers are put in properly. The cigar is not too tight, it's not too loose, and it's going to have a perfect draw. And then I know we will be getting a lot of questions about what happens with a tight draw and what happens with a loose draw. And I think, Jeremiah, because you haven't smoked as long as Carlito and I have, but I think you started smoking at the age of 14.
Who told you that? It's true, but nobody should know about it.
I know. I think at 13, I heard a story about the dragon, but that's for another day.
Absolutely. But Jose, why don't you explain what entubado means?
Okay, entubado. So let's say you're doing the book. So what you're doing is you're putting all the leaves, putting always the viso or the ligero always has to go in the middle. So if you go to the foot of the cigar, and that's, I don't know if probably they've asked you a lot in Europe because they've asked me this question. People always ask me, why in the middle of the cigar, even though the leaves on the, on the circle, you're always going to see that little dark spot in the middle. That's because the strongest cigar the strongest leaf, whether it's a ligero or a viso, has to be in the middle. Why does it have to be in the middle? Because if it would be on the side, then the cigar would probably tunnel on you or canoe on you. Now, what is entubar? Entubar is that, let's say you have a Robusto, which is basically 5 leaves. Every leaf, you have to roll it up like you were doing like a crepe, I would say is the closest thing into it. And then let's say you take those 5 leaves, the roller, because they've done it so much, they have the feel in that. Then they put it on the table. They put on the binder. Then they very delicate start to roll it. And as many people who have been in factories see, they not all the time get it correct on the first roll. Sometimes you see they go back and then they very carefully put it in the mold. And that gives you a perfect draw. And to me, I'm a big fan of entubar.
So you explained that there's a risk of canoeing, there's a risk of tunneling. Now, does that mean that the tobaccos there is an impact in terms of the way it burns, the heat, and in terms of the conduction of how the burning happens with the cigar?
Yes, when an entubar, and I mean, you could do entubar, but if it's not done, because you do entubar, it doesn't mean it's going to draw perfectly. It has to be done with a lot of precision, but also remember how much of impact is the quality of the tobacco going to have. Because if the tobacco is young, you're going to have a burning problem. You're going to have a taste problem. You're going to have a bad aftertaste. So it's really not only the method of making the cigar, it's also the quality and the agings of the tobacco. And I mean, you've seen it because you've been at the Fuente factory and other factories, probably outside of the family. I think you've been the person that's been at Fuente more than anybody else since a kid.
Yeah. So what does entubado mean? I mean, isn't that a Spanish word which means a tube?
Yes. Entubar, the entubado. It's really, people here say entubar, but it's really, the Spanish would say, es un cigarro entubado. But the majority of people, because, you know, we've talked about this, the lack of education, a lot of people don't really get into things. And I know that we want to be as transparent as possible. And here, like we said, we're not selling cigars, we're giving education. And we just want people to know all the hard work that is put into making a great cigar.
So what Jose says is very important. There are several different methods of rolling the tobaccos and assembling them. One of them, I would believe, is a very old, historic, traditional Cuban methodology, which is the entubado, which is rolling those tobaccos in little tubes and then positioning themselves in the cigars. And that will ensure a different combustion, a more homogeneous combustion, and a better draw. But if it's so much better, Jose, why doesn't everybody do it?
You know, that is what we used to call, when I was young, the $64,000 question. And to my knowledge, and you know, we don't talk about anybody else, there's only one other factory in Dominican Republic. He's an old friend of all of us that soon is going to be on the show also, that does it that way. Because while a guy with the book, as we call it, el libro or planchado, could probably make 200, 250 robustos a day, the guy who's doing entubar, which are really, really rollers, is going to do a less amount of cigars than a person that is doing the book, or what they call in Nicaragua, some people, they call it estubado, where they just do one leaf entubado and then the rest just goes, you know, the old-fashioned way.
So it's like everything else in the world. Basically quantity, and then you have some people out there which are willing to slow down the production, slow down the yields, slow down the profits, and do things the expensive way. And in this case, the entubado is the expensive way.
No, without a doubt. I mean, we're not going to get into numbers of things like that because it's not our thing. But I can tell you that very few factories in the world are as, how would you say, quality control maniacs on steroids as Fuente. That doesn't mean there are not other factories that are not like that, but I can tell you, I probably visit every factory, premium factory out there in every country, and I can tell you, the way cigars are made in Fuente are made in a totally different way than other people. And that's why, you know, sometimes we don't have enough cigars and people complain.
Sometimes. Let me tell you something. Let's try every day of the week. All right. We're not here to talk about other people, remember.
Yeah, I know.
Professor, it's Melanie's time to present the hotspot, and I think somebody's going to try to nail the professor. Melanie, the hotspot.
Hey, so Professor, we have a nice question for you here for sure. It looks like I got a couple. I would say for the Nail the Professor, let's try this one out first because it's interesting. So you've got the best roller with the best tobacco and the best supervisor bunches of cigar. But what can still happen wrong to create a plugged cigar?
Oh, that could happen anywhere. Look, what people don't understand is that when the roller, anybody who's seen the video has been a factory, you see that the roller is going to take those leaves in his hand. And if they're not put in a proper position, that will create or a tight cigar or a very loose cigar. What sometimes we call nudo, which means knot in English. Sometimes we could take a cigar, take it in our hands and feel it, and we could say, this cigar will not draw. But that said, I have been mistaken because people have given me a cigar and I picked cigars at different factories. And I said, this might have a problem. I feel it, you weigh it in your hand and just say, this cigar might have a couple of grams more than what a Robusto should have. And all of a sudden you clip it and it's draw perfect. What tells you is that even though it's a little bit impacted, the roller did a good job on it. So it could happen.
There's a scientist, I guess a scientist, just the right amount of touch. So the next question is regarding construction, and they're asking, does positioning and break up the leaves can be used to create more complexity?
No, doesn't have anything to do with that, because what people have to understand that when the master blender is creating that blend, he is saying X percentage of ligero, X percentage of viso, X percentage of seco. And then at the same time, he's sitting down with the supervisor, and every factory has a couple of guys that the master blender is working with them, making notes and says, I want the cigar made this way. So right away, that person knows how the percentage-wise of all the tobaccos will be placed when they are making the cigars.
Well, guys, be careful because nobody's nailed the professor just yet. Keep those questions going. We're going to try.
I've definitely been thinking about it. I'm like, what can I keep asking them? I want to do this.
Melanie, any other questions coming up here?
I don't see one right as of yet, but I am putting it out there so that people can come back and ask more.
All right, back to you, Professor.
Listen, one of the things that I would say that has to do a lot with the cigar, and you know this for a fact, and we talked a little bit about it the other day, is how people smoke. There's people that always are complaining about cigars because they smoke a cigar like they were smoking a cigarette. And to be honest, a lot of people, I ask them this question, and I get two answers with that. Did you used to smoke cigarettes? I'm not going to say a lot of people. Some people say, yeah, I used to be a cigarette smoker. And then the other thing a lot of people tell me, it all depends how my day is. If I'm really have a problem, if I'm working with some of these hedge funds, or I'm running an operation, or I'm trying to sell insurance, and the day has been bad, I'm going to smoke that cigar as fast as possible. And then that same people tell me, you know what? I had a great day. I'm going to smoke this Hemingway. That, by the way, I'm smoking one now. I don't know why. I don't really know the wrapper on this one. And they tell me, I'll take 2 hours. I'll take 2 hours to smoke. I think it has to do a lot with something that is called state of mind. What you eat, what you drink, if it's hot, if it's cold. Everything has to do in the way you feel to smoke a cigar. Even when you're going to pair. And I know that one of these days we're going to have, I think, a good friend of Benoit and a good friend of yours, Jeremiah, that's going to come here, and he's going to give us a good lecture on pairings. I think he's a famous sommelier from Belgium. I don't know the guy, but when I go to Belgium, I hope to meet him.
Wonderful. All right, guys, listen. Somebody just popped out to the show, and of course, he's the father of all fathers, Mr. Carlos Fuente. Hello, Carlito. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. Good night.
What's up?
Great, Papo, great.
All right. We got a beautiful question that just came in from Mr. Dimitri Kneiper. I'm gonna try to get Dimitri on the air so he can ask this question live. Dimitri, can you hear us?
Loud and clear, Jeremiah. How are you?
I'm doing great, my friend. How are you?
Fine, fine. Enjoying the sunshine. A nice estancia outside, so it's okay.
There's worse things in life. You want to ask your question, my friend?
Yes. Carlito, or Professor, what is the difference between in construction between a Shark Patola and a box pressed cigar?
Well, to be honest, we have to leave that, and I don't think we're going to have any arguments between Carlito and me on that one. That's a hot potato for me. I know the answer, but who can give it better with the master of the Shark?
No.
No, no, it's totally different. Traditionally, cigars are made round. They're made a little softer, so you can put them in a trunk and press them. You put them in wood and press them after they're made, and they have to have a certain condition, because if not, you would break the cigar or you would plug it, because when you're pressing, it's almost like ironing clothes. I mean, you're taking away all the flaws and you're making it nice and square and beautiful. The Shark, the difference with the Shark is the Shark was designed. It was designed round the square. It is made round the square. It is put in a mold round the square. It is not made then pressed after. It's a totally different concept and a totally different way of making cigars. And it was the first time ever in the history of cigar making that this was ever accomplished.
Wow.
See, I learned something today.
Yeah, well, you know what? I learned something too. And actually, you know what? Maybe the professor was actually nailed on this. Dimitri, you won a bobblehead.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
I definitely need a bobblehead so I can put my ashes out on the forehead. That's a good way to put on your cigar.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Dimitri, stay tuned, stay live. We're going on the next question. You take care, my friend. We'll talk to you in a few minutes. All right. Okay, Melanie, I see there's a lot of questions coming in, so back to Melanie on the next.
All right, we'll start with the first one. It says a Lieberman machine. Why it has been more used in the Dominican Republic?
Well, to be honest, and Lieberman machines are used, I would say, with the vast majority of factories, the big factories in DR, they use the Lieberman. In Nicaragua, some companies use it, and but the way that at Fuente, the Lieberman is not used. It's like we talked before, everything is entubado, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that every factory has different ways of making the cigars. It's no big secret. A lot of companies use the Lieberman, and if it's done properly, the cigar is going to draw like that. But, every company, like I said, has different ways of making cigars, fermenting the tobacco and all that. It's just that everything is different. It's similar in many ways, but when it comes to construction, it's just unique the way that cigars are made at Fuente. I think that's the only thing I can say I'm allowed to say.
I would also like to add to that, Jose. You're absolutely right, Professor. I would also like to add to that. A Lieberman is a tool, and just like a chaveta is a knife, is a tool to cut the edges nice and even and smooth. You don't rip it. Just like a mold is a tool to form your cigar. Just like the press is a tool to hold your molds together to keep a press. A Lieberman is a tool if used properly. Problem is that many people do not. They take advantage of a Lieberman to make more production, but that wasn't the intention of a Lieberman. The intention of a Lieberman is that your binder, which rolls your cigar, is at the same angle every single time. It's a tool to guide you. And the compression that you put on your bunch, it's exactly the same every single time. A cigar maker with fatigue has a tendency to start towards the end, twisting the filler, and that's why you have a lot of cigars coming from some countries that don't use Liebermans that are constantly plugged up. Even though you touch them and you say, wow, they're soft, they're good, they're moist, they have moisture. When you go to smoke it, halfway through, they're plugged up. because the cigar maker was fatigued after a certain amount of time, has a tendency, they gets tired, he's not noticing, they twist your filler as they're rolling towards the head. That's the same thing as a ball player. Statistics, numbers. You know, many pitchers throw so many pitches and they take them out. They know he threw so many pitches. Cigar making is not that way. They work so many hours, and if they're tired, sometimes they just let them keep rolling to make more cigars. A leverment is good if it's used correctly.
I agree with you.
That's awesome. Well, Carlito, I have another question for you, and it says, how have you created the salty becoming sweet PJ cigar?
That's a naughty one.
Ask him if he has any imaginations. And if he's an adult or something, you know.
My goodness. Well, he can hear you.
Because the minerals are a little so salty. And I remember that when I was very young, and my father's peers, my grandfathers, they used to detect certain tobacco from Cuba, and because it was salty, you know, they would detect where the area was from, and they would say that's partido. Oh yeah, they're using partido. They say that's wet abajo, but that's partido because it's salty. And there's certain minerals in certain soils, but remember, it's just the little tip. And then, you know, the sweetness comes from certain leaves that are from the lower part of the plant that you use inside. You can use as a binder or something to give you a certain sweetness. But then the power comes from the inside, from the baritone. That's when it kicks in. And when you put that kind of power, and it's almost impossible to make unless you make the tubes have to look like a spaghetti. That's how thin they have to be. To get that kind of blend in a cigar that thin is very, very difficult. And when you get that dimension, that concentrated, that much power, a power that's like a 60 ring gauge cigar compressed into a cigar the size of a needle, you know that you're going to get a spin for your life.
I agree.
Yeah, well, that still doesn't tell us where that PJ juice comes from. But anyways.
Well, I know where the inspiration came from.
You picked that up on the first line. We knew that. So did you explain to them, Carlito, why the box press was even created in the first place? Like why somebody?
I always believed in being first and doing things differently. And it was something that just occurred because when you make a cigar and you press it, at one time, all our cigars were pressed. All Fuente cigars were pressed, so made with all Havana tobacco. You make a cigar, you make a little soft, and you press and you take away all the flaws. You take away and you wrinkle, you press it like ironing clothes again. But when we moved to the Dominican Republic, I wanted to make cigars as round as possible because it was a transition in an era from machine-made cigars to handmade cigars. And we wanted to demonstrate a perfectly round cigars, perfectly round without any flaws or any softness. But it got to the point where people were starting to press cigars again. And to make a press cigar, we started with VSGs. We started box pressing VSGs, Ashton VSGs. But we realized you got to make them softer. I wanted to make a cigar solid in the cigar maker's hand, make that cigar solid exactly the way I wanted it to be when it's lit up. Not make a cigar softer and then make it firmer by pressing it. That's where we created this idea to make it round to square. And the reason why round to square, because it's such a big ring gauge that I felt that square is very difficult because it's not only form, it has to function. In my mind, everything we do has to function. For me, I make cigars that I like to enjoy. I make cigars that I would smoke myself. And I just hope that other people enjoy it also. But I don't make cigars because other people ask me, oh, make a cigar like this or like that. I have to believe in it first myself. And for me to make a cigar that thick and square was very difficult for me to smoke. And that's where the idea came, to get to something that falls softly in your mouth, but you got a big, heavy cigar at the end that's square. And it's all compact, and it has the same amount of tobacco at the same condition that when a cigar maker made in his hand. It's not pressed after it's made.
Oh, that's interesting.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why it's so important to log on to this show and to listen to what these experts have to say, because at the end of the day, the show, like Carlito always says, is not about cigars, but it's about people. And when you listen to what the people have to say, there's a lot to learn. Back to you, Professor.
You know, there's a question I'm gonna ask Carlito about it, because I think it's something we've never touched. And I'm gonna bring up something that people ask me all the time. People ask me all the time, what's the hardest cigar to really make? Is it a Bellicoso? Is it a Diadema Fino? Is it a Salomon? In my personal opinion, because I don't know the whole portfolio of Fuente, to be honest, it's, you know, I'm doing my MBA here at Fuente after my bachelor degree, so I still have to go into a lot of details. So I've always thought, in my opinion, it's a Lancero 7x38. But I'm gonna go to Carlito. In your opinion, after doing this for so many years, in your personal opinion, what do you think it's the hardest cigar to make, or the hardest size to make?
Well, I think the way we make cigars, I have no doubt the way we make them, because we're using 7 different leaves in one profile, is a Lancero by far. Because you could teach people to make shaped cigars and make all different cigars, but to make a Lancero every day with 7 different leaves, and I have never had the first one that doesn't draw. And they all seem like they're perfectly made. They're very consistent. I think that that's the hardest accomplishment to achieve, what has been achieved with that Lancero. To me, that's
so you agree with me on Lancero.
With that, the way we make that Lancero, yes, I definitely agree with you with that particular Lancero.
And it's funny because last night somebody on Facebook posted I think it's a Don Carlos Lancero, maybe, I don't know if it's a unique edition, maybe that you make, and the conversation went in through Lanceros. And a lot of people after that have said, well, you know, you guys should make more Lanceros. And I said, well, that's a question. I don't know if you saw the comment, Carlito, was on Facebook. Somebody who's a friend of yours brought it up, but it's a cigar that doesn't really sell that much. But to me, Lancero is one of the most elegant cigars, and it's cigars that I think the true connoisseurs really, really appreciate what it's all about. That's my personal opinion.
I sold a lot of Lanceros. You just have to them that it's beautiful and put it in their hands, and they're like, okay, like they bought boxes. I love a Lancero. So
let me be totally fair. Let me be totally fair to everyone's question. Those Lanceros were never made to be sold. The original idea of making that Lancero so difficult was to raise money for charity. If you do something so difficult that people will want to collect, and really, it's not about the cigar, like I said, it's about the people and the cause, and go to charities to raise a lot of money. There's only one person in the whole factory that bunches that Lancero. Before that person was his professor, who now has a top position in the tobacco division. We make other Lanceros. I can make a lot of Lanceros, but after you make that particular Lancero, the way we make that Lancero, it's hard for me to make other Lanceros they make 25 cigars a day, Jose. 25, Professor. 25 cigars a day. It is very hard to go into production with a cigar like that and to keep up those standards. And I know that people compare with the Lancero, so right now, that is my concern, because making the Lancero shape is not a problem. We can make as many people make Lancero shapes. But making Lancero shapes that way,
I know,
it takes years to train someone. And unless I can make it as good and make more the same, I would prefer not to than to be judged ones against the other and for me to fail one of my customers.
Absolutely.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we have the ladies of all ladies, the queens of all queens, who has written on our chat panel right here. Let me see if I can pull her in live, because it's nobody else than the one and only Liana Fuente. Let me see if I can get her in. Liana, can you hear me? Liana? We're not getting any sound here for some reason. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask her a question to her father. talking about shaped cigars, Carlito, is it hard to make a culebras? And historically, why was it created? So let's split that question into two. Carlito, is it hard to make? And Professor, historically, why was it created?
Okay, we make culebras, but as one-offs and one of a kind for charity. No, it's not hard to make. You just have to, put that into a production mode if you want to make them. The reason that I don't make it or haven't made it in production because I don't smoke them myself. It's not something that I would buy for myself. And like I said before, everything I do because I believe in it, that I would purchase it myself. I'm the first most critical consumer of all Fuente cigars. It's very seldom that I get one of a Fuente cigars and don't find a flaw in it. I'm always looking for every imperfection to try to make things better. The history of Culebra, I really don't know the history, but I know that it goes back a long time to Cuba. But I don't know where it started, but I do know that we do make some, and we make some very artistic ones, but it's for charity. It's done for charity. We do not make culebras in a production basis. Professor?
Look, from what I've researched and talked, being there and asking the old timers, it's what I've learned a lot from a lot of mutual friends that we have. Yes, it goes back to Cuba. I agree with you. I've had, to be honest, maybe out of the 50 or 60,000 cigars that I've smoked, maybe I smoked maybe 10 culebras. It's not my thing. People think it's more harder to make. You would give me $1 million to make a culebra. I couldn't do it, but it's just not my thing. And I know that Carlito has done them for charity and people go wild on it. And it's because it's not really, it's because of, it's for the reason they're made. They're unique. People will buy them. They'll pay whatever it is to have it, but it's because it's for a good cause. It's not because of anything else. That's my personal opinion. Yeah.
But why historically were they made, Professor?
No, to be honest, I wouldn't know. I would research that.
We have a winner. This is the first time in the history of our show that somebody has managed to nail both the professor and the God of all gods, the Father of all fathers, and it has been done. It has been done by nobody else.
Wait, I have a challenge. I want you to ask Liana that same question, and I would bet 10 to 1 she has the answer.
I'm sure she does have the answer. And this is specifically why Liana Fuente wins the biggest challenge that we've ever had. Okay, we're going to have to send you a bobblehead, Liana.
But you want me to tell you something? And this is why this program, this show, whatever you want to call it, is so unique. Because those are the questions that will even make us look more into details. Because I never would have thought, any details like culebra. I've never liked them. Carlito doesn't like them either. But I think it's good for us to, really go down, and I will do my research on culebras. And I know the people who to ask for this.
I know exactly who to ask. And it's going to be the biggest guest of honor we've ever had on the show. We're going to wait for Liana to come on the show, and she's going to explain to us what it is and teach you, Mr. Professor.
I'm willing to learn about it. I don't really know where culebras come from, the idea.
All right. We have a really good question that came in from Alex. Alex, I'm going to pull you in, and let's see if this works. Can you hear us, Alex?
I was eating.
Bon appetit, Senor Alex. How are you?
How is everybody? It's an honor to talk with legends almost daily.
It's an honor to have you follow the show, Alex.
Thanks.
I think I might have nailed the professor earlier. Can I add that?
All right, go ahead.
Can I try? Okay. So you have the perfect roller with the perfect technique, perfect supervisor. The molds are fine. What can still make the cigar be plugged?
That the roller did not put, like Carlito said before, that the roller did not put the leaves in the correct positions. Because remember,
But what if you
If
put
that-
leaves in the correct position?
No, then
They can plug.
no, it can, if the leaves are put in if the buncher puts the leaves in the the way they should be positioned, there is no way that cigar could be plugged, or that cigar could be tight, or that cigar could be loose. And you have to remember.
What if the filler's too wet?
Professor, there is one way. There is one way. If the roller splices the binder, and there's a twist, Carlito can explain to you. If the roller splices the binder, and there's a movement in the binder when they're rolling, that could create blockage in the cigar. Carlito, you want to explain to everybody how that works?
Yes, the professor's completely right. If everything is done properly and every tobacco is in position, there's no way that it shouldn't draw. Of course, humidity has a big factor in combustion.
Yes, it does.
But humidity is very important. But considering the humidity, if the cigar is the exact weight, and the exact length and diameter, and every leaf is in the same position, it should draw. That includes that cigar makers not taking pieces and putting it inside, taking pieces, because I don't believe in that. Getting pieces, breaking it off, putting inside so that they make less short filler and they put it back in the cigar to save money. That's not what I'm referring to. If the leaf is like a channel, if it's from end to end completely, and the cigars are right diameter, the right weight, and every leaf is in the correct position, and the binder, like Jeremiah said, the binder has to be outside of the filler itself, because there's a tendency the binder could go inside the filler, and when you twist it, it tightens your filler. That could happen. But that goes back to what the professor said. That's improper construction.
But the other thing is, you have to, I want our listeners to understand, and our viewers, that after those cigars are made in wheel of 50, that goes, and the cigars are weighed. And there is a standard where if it has so much X of grams or under, then the supervisor will take each cigar, by one, and weigh individually every cigar, and then they can tell if this cigar has less tobacco or more tobacco. That's the way I know it's done at Fuente, because I've seen it.
Nice try, Alex.
I was trying to nail him down on the tobacco, the filler being too wet. That's what I was trying to nail the professor on.
Well, you know what? It was a good shot. Keep going at it, and hopefully you'll be able to nail the percentage.
Well, you know what? I think he deserves at least a couple of arms in the bobblehead.
This took a lot of work. He worked his butt off today.
Yeah, no, the intention was good, but not just yet. Alex, you're going to have to come back on the show or the questions real soon to nail the professor. But today,
yes, sir.
It's just not happening. All right, talk to you later, my friends.
Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care, Alex. Good talking to you, brother.
All right, Melanie, back to you for Melanie's hotspot. I think there's some questions coming in.
All right, so it looks like Liana is definitely requested to be on the show, so we got to make that happen. And I'm not seeing any questions, actually.
Oh, there's a Q&A which is open up there. Let's see. All
right, so to the professor. Oh, did we already answer that one? Okay, so what are you saying, Jose, is that cigars are not really hand because they are using buncher, or you
I didn't hear the question well.
Right. So what are you saying, Jose, is that cigars are not really handmade because they are using the buncher, the machine I suppose?
No. That's no. Carlito explained it, and I explained it also. Of course, the cigar is handmade. The Lieberman machine, what it does is that you take the fillers, the buncher puts it in his hand, then he puts it in the Lieberman machine. He rolls it instead of like a guy who's not using the Lieberman does this with his hand. The Lieberman machine does the same thing, but it is a handmade cigar. Cigars that are made with machines are those short filler things, the Phillies, and all that stuff. But whether you're using the bunch without the machine or using the lever machine, it's considered a handmade cigar.
So it sounds like it's out there.
I like to add to that if possible, please. I like that because we made many machine-made long filler cigars in our lives. Go back to the 70s. I remember I used to work on them myself and feed the machine and work. And I remember it's a totally different. You cannot make a long filler machine-made cigar, even though it's long filler, and there's many still made in the world, as same as you can make a cigar by hand. A long filler machine, you put in a belt, in a conveyor, you put the whole leaves in there, but then it goes into a pressure foot that brings it down, and the leaves are sliced. They're sliced. If you open up a cigar that's bunched by a machine, you can see where it's sliced. And even though you go into wide, you try all these techniques, you can never be precise in the position where every leaf goes the same way as a handmade cigar. Now, a Lieberman, I don't consider it a machine. I consider it a tool. It's a tool, exactly. Just like a glove. A glove is to a ball player, or it's a tool, or like the chaveta is a cigar maker, or a mold. Because we could start also get to the discussion that cigars are not handmade because 200 years ago they used to make them without molds. Now they use molds. Now they use presses. Now they use different tools. These are tools to assist if you do it properly, to assist perfection. It is impossible for most human beings to have the same compression when you roll a cigar, every single one, after 8 or 9 hours of work. It's like any sport or anything. You have fatigue that comes in place. If a Lieberman is done right, you make the cigar in your hand. It's complete. All you do is place it, and it just rolls it with the same compression, exactly the same, which your hands should be able to do for 8 hours, which is impossible. It's the tool to assist, to try to achieve more consistent quality.
Papo,
I agree. I agree with that
100%. It's important to explain to the viewers today that the Lieberman is not an electronic or a electricity-derived device. All it is a tiny little carpet with a lever on it. It's actually it's mechanically hand moved. So there is no electronic or electrical machinery which is happening anywhere. It's a very old school, old world device which is being used. Is that correct?
Correct. It's not hydraulic. It's not that. And the thing is, you're going to see it when you see the videos that the roller is just, the buncher is just pushing it with his hand and still, gently looking at the binder is put on properly. So it's like Carlito says, it's a tool. It's not a machine. It's just a tool.
Right. Now, there's a lot of questions coming in, but some of them here are coming in concerning, I've just logged on, as many other people. I missed 20 minutes of the show. How do I watch it? What do I do? Melanie, maybe you explain to everybody.
That's the greatest question in the world. I'm so happy. Okay, so all right. So first of all, remember the Fuente show. Okay, we called it the Fuente show because we figured that's nice and easy for you guys. The Fuente show. So you can go to Facebook and look up the Fuente show, and you can find our links there. But we're also on YouTube, and we have videos. We have all of our episodes on YouTube right now, as of now. And tomorrow, would not be surprised that you will find a new website with all of your information.
Wow. Thank you, Melanie. Doing a great job.
Good job, Melanie.
Very good. So remember, you log into the YouTube channel, the Fuente show, or Fuente and Meerapfel present The Professor, and it's all over social media. Hey, hell, everybody's talking about it. All right, back to you, The Professor.
I have a question. I have a question. Jeremiah, the Godfather.
We're listening to you.
Okay, good. On my personal messages and on my personal Facebook, I'm asked over and over, are you the model that's on the Stefano Ricci ad holding the blue Fuente Open Sacks? And I don't know what to answer them.
You're talking to him or me?
I'm talking to the Godfather, to
Okay.
Jeremiah Meerapfel. The
All
question is, are you the model that's on the Stefano Ricci advertisement with the eagle on the shoulder and holding a Fuente Open Sacks blue?
This is what I'm going to answer you. I think we should get the Richies on the show and have them answer that question. What do you think?
Ooh.
Hey, I think we nailed the professor again.
Look, to be honest, I haven't seen the ad. I would have to see the ad to see if it's Jeremiah or maybe you, because one thing you can be sure, I'm not on that ad.
All right, I think we got to get somebody much more good looking on that ad. We'll get Liana on the ad, or Melanie, or somebody much more fun to look at than myself or the professor. All right, so questions. We got a question coming in from Rich, which is a very good question actually. Let me see if we can get Rich to answer to ask his question directly. Rich Myberg, you are on air. What's your question, Rich? Rich, can you hear us?
He's just on mute.
I think that Rich is on mute.
Rich is on mute.
No, I think I'm off mute.
Yes,
Now you're off mute, Rich. Go ahead. What's your question?
Which one was it? I sent in a couple for my friend, the professor.
You sent in a very good question asking Jose about the Ligero.
Oh, yeah. Professor.
Hey, Rich, how are you?
Fine. We haven't spoken since Saturday, so I guess I'm okay.
I know. Rich and I go way back, and even Carlito, he's a dear friend of Carlito and the family. They go way back.
You're
Yes.
a lucky man.
Well, it's all about the people. Somebody I know said that. So when a Bonchero is working, do most of the blends put the Ligero in the center of the filler?
Yes, we talked about it a little bit earlier, and that's why I said that sometimes people would ask me, look, they look at the foot of the cigar and they see that little black spot. Sometimes it's darker than others. And what you can tell, depending on what kind of, you're going to see that more on medium body cigars, medium to full, and really on full body cigars. You're going to see that black spot or that different color of totally leaf. And that's because if that Ligero is not put in the center, what's going to happen is the cigar is going to burn sideways. It's going to canoe. It's going to tunnel. So that's why, a lot of people I see on Facebook, they post photos and things like that. This cigar canoed on this and that. And, we're not going to talk about who did it or what. That's not what we're talking about. What we can tell anybody is that a cigar maker, or that guy, the bonchero, the roller, depending if you're working in pairs or not, has to put that Ligero right in the middle, or that viso in the middle, because if not, the cigar can canoe, can tunnel, could even be plugged. It's what we call in the industry, and Carlito can elaborate about that, it's called placement, posicionamiento of the leaf.
Right, and the Ligero tobaccos are most times hold a little more moisture than some of the other leaves. So in the center, that ash usually is pointed when the Ligero is dead center, because it's burning just a tad slower than the rest of the filler. Is that what I see?
Yeah, well, what happens is you have to understand that the Ligero is the top priming, it's the highest priming of the leaf. And also it's, Ligero is going to be different. It's not the same thing, let's say, a Ligero, let's say from a Piloto Cubano Ligero, than maybe a Ligero from Estelí, or a Ligero from Mao, or a Ligero from Jacagua, because at the end of the day, it's all about the soil. And you got to remember that the Ligero is going to be the leaf that has the most amount of oils. And because it has the most amount of oils, that's where the fermentation process comes in. But not only the fermentation process, it's the aging process. And a lot of people forget about that leaves, ligeros, will have more years of aging than a viso and a seco because of the essential oils and the oomph that leaf of tobacco has. That's where you're going to get all that where the majority of the strength of the cigar comes from.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keep those questions coming, and stay tuned. It's that time of the day where we're off to Benoit's Baked. Benoit?
Yep.
Up to you.
Up to me. It's about duck today. Everybody like duck?
Like duck, coin, coin duck?
Coin, coin duck, yes. So let's go. It's a duck, walks into a pub and orders a pint of beer and a ham sandwich. So the barman looks at him and says, "Hang on, you're a duck?" "Yep," replies the duck. "And you can talk," exclaims the barman. "Yep again," said the duck. "No, if you don't mind, can I have my beer and my sandwich, please?" "Oh, certainly, sorry about that," says the barman, as he puts the duck's pint. "It's just we don't get many ducks in this pub. What are you doing round this way?" "I'm working at the building site across the road," explained the duck. "I am a plasterer." So the flabbergasted barman cannot believe the duck. He wants to learn more, but takes a hint when the duck pulls out a newspaper from his bag and proceeds to read it. So the duck reads his paper, drinks his beer, eats his sandwich, bids the barman good day and leaves. So the same thing happens for 2 weeks. Then one day the circus comes to town. The ringmaster comes into the pub for a pint, and the barman says to him, "You are with the circus, aren't you? Well, I noticed duck that could be just brilliant in your circus. He talks, drinks beer, eats sandwiches, reads a new paper, and everything." "Sounds marvelous," said the ringmaster, handing over his business card. "Get him to give me a call." So the next day, when the duck comes into the pub, the barman says, "Hey, Mr. Doug, I reckon I can line you up with a top job paying really good money." "I'm always looking for the next job," says the duck. "Where is it?" "At the circus," said the barman. "The circus?" repeats the duck. "That's right," replies the barman. "The circus?" the duck asks again. "With the big tent?" "Yeah," the barman replies. "With all the animals who live in cage and performers who live in caravan?" said the duck. "Of course," the barman replies. "And the tent has a canvas sides and a big canvas roof with a hole in the middle?" persists the duck. "That's right," says the barman. The duck shakes his head in amazement and says, "What the fuck would they want with a plasterer?" Guys.
Another one of Benoit's big stories. A duck is a duck, of course, of course.
Of course.
Now I know why they call it Belgian beer quack. Now I know why they call it quack.
Yeah, Belgian beer and half of our population. All right, back to you, the professor. Thank you, Benoit.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Benoit. Thank you.
All right, professor's on mute. We will go back to Melanie.
No, I got it. No, okay.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry.
Back to you.
No, I was saying, we were talking about construction, and Rich Meiberg put up a very interesting question about ligeros. And I think about ligeros, which is a topic that I know that Carlito gets a lot of questions about it. And I guess, Jeremiah, you too. I would like to, Carlito, to maybe talk a little bit more about ligeros and clarify to people, especially I would say on some of the brands that really have made a name for Fuente, how difficult and how, I'm not going to say difficult, but how really careful you have to be when you're using those ligeros. Carlito, I think that you can elaborate on that a bit.
Professor, you answered the question very well. Those are things that the ligeros is the most mysterious and complicated leaf of all the cigars, of all the tobaccos. Ligero is just a term given to a texture of a leaf when you go to grading. It's a thicker leaf. Sometimes people may mistake a darker leaf for being a ligero. It is not necessarily a ligero because it doesn't have the texture and it could ruin it. A ligero is something that you want. I look at it as harmony. Like when you have a group of music, you need the tenor, you need the bass, you need the soprano. A ligero's there to give you balance and give you that bass that you feel underneath the cigar. I think there was a tendency for trying to make a cigar strong. You have people all of a sudden coming into the industry, tasting cigars. And one thing I've learned with time, remember, I've been this already, 55 years, 50 years. And our whole world of cigars changed because all of a sudden you have people coming in and they're giving you opinion on cigars. And they smoke an inch or two, and all of a sudden they say, oh, powerful, strong. And it created all this big trend for strength. But I wasn't taught that way. I was taught balance. And a ligero, if it's too young, to me the secret of ligeros is that is age. It's like Pepe Mendes, Jose Mendes told me a long time ago, don't Pepe himself in the 70s. The secret to a great cigar is time, and more time. And to be able to make a great cigar consistently, you have to have a great amount of inventory and age. And too much ligero is not good. It's not good for the tobacco grower starting from the ground up, because the leaf only gives you a plant only gives so many leaves of ligero.
Exactly.
It is not good. It is not good for the manufacturer because it's not available, and manufacturers are forced to use tobacco too young to be able to make a cigar with a certain amount of strength.
Oh yeah.
And it's not good for the retailer. It's not good for the retailer because a person smokes a cigar and he smokes half, and then he feels a little nausea, dizzy, this and that, and he's not going to buy a box. You want to make a cigar that when you get to the very end, you go, oh shit, man, I wish I had a toothpick, and keep smoking. And then you say, man, you know what, this cigar is so good. You're sitting in a cigar lounge in a smoke shop, says, I want to go buy the rest of the box. This is old school. This is the way I was taught. And it's not answering your question about ligeros because there's certain things that you and I know, but it's very difficult to explain in 5 minutes, and we don't have the intention to explain those things either.
That's true, but one of the but you made a very, very good observation. Ligeros is not because of the color; it's that thickness of that leaf, and that's why when you're using that ligero and that cigar, that tobacco has to be really aged. It has to have time. Because if not, it will not burn. You will have a bitterness and a sourness to it. And you said very important about ligeros. And a lot of people don't even describe it the way you do. It's what really brings up the balance on that blend. The ligero has so much to do with it. So I agree with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are hundreds of questions coming in. Unfortunately, it's that time of the day. If we could stay on air for another 2 hours, we would barely have time to get through all these questions. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to call this. You're
gonna have to come back and ask them again.
Exactly. So stay tuned tomorrow, same time, same place for another episode of Fuente Meerapfel presents The Professor. In the meantime, we have announcements to make. Melanie, special guest for tomorrow? Special guest for tomorrow. Tomorrow we have Abe Flores, Abraham Flores. Professor, tell us a little bit about Abe.
Abe is a person that I've known for many, many years. We have a very close relationship. I know that Carlito likes him a lot. He's one of the young guys that's out there. But there's something about Abe, and that's what I wanted. I talked to him. He was very excited. Abe is not only a cigar maker, but also he's a musician. So tomorrow you're going to be in for a treat. We're going to learn a lot about Abe, what he's done, but he's also from his recording studio. He's going to do a number, and maybe if we all like it, we'll ask him to do 2 numbers.
That's wonderful. So tomorrow, make sure you join us to smoke a cigar and have lots of fun with Abe, because remember, this is not about cigars, but it's about people. That's what our Papo says. That's what Carlito Fuente always says. This is not about cigars. This is about people. And of course, on Friday, everybody come in numbers. The queen, the empress, the goddess of the cigar industry, Mrs. Cynthia Fuente, will be joining us Friday live for our show. In the meantime, stay well, stay healthy, take care of yourselves, and take care of others. Goodbye for now. See you tomorrow. Same place, same time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Take care.